Welcome everyone to Planet Linux. I'm glad that you found this video. Today we're taking a look at Peppermint OS 8. Now if you're not familiar with Peppermint OS, it is meant to be a fast and lightweight Linux distribution, typically meant for lower-end hardware or computers that are older and may not support other Linux distributions or operating systems that require more system resources. It's also a great option on modern computers, even if they do have better hardware, as it just uses less resources overall and saves your computer's memory for the applications you're running themselves, or potentially helps save battery. Before we get into what's new in Peppermint OS 8, I'd like to note that it's based on Ubuntu 16.04 and is running off of the 4.8 Linux kernel. I personally haven't had any significant issues with the 4.8 kernel. All modern hardware seems to work great with it. All the printers, keyboards, mice that I've tried have worked just fine. Audio out of the box has worked very well, both as far as input and output devices, so I haven't had any issues. Let's take a quick look also at the amount of RAM this is using. Of course, the only thing running on this right now is my screen recorder, which does use quite a bit more RAM. Currently, this is using 387 megabytes. At first boot, this was clocking in at right about 270 megabytes of RAM being used, which is quite low, and I'd say it's pretty impressive. The minimum system requirements for Peppermint OS is 512 megs of RAM. And I think that while it would certainly run a bit slower on a computer with that little of memory, as long as you're not doing resource-intensive tasks, I think it would run pretty well. Screen recording is known to take up a fair bit of RAM and computer memory, and even so, this is still only using 387 megs. There are some interesting things that make Peppermint OS stand out from other distributions that run on XFCE. Of course, XFCE is typically a more lightweight desktop environment, but Peppermint definitely takes advantage of not only the lower system resources that XFCE uses, but also some applications and some workarounds for applications that give you a lot of functionality without using a lot of system memory. And one of these things is the ICE window wrapper. This allows you to essentially create web applications for any website that you like. So say you go to Facebook a lot, you can create a Facebook web application that will show up in your menu as a native application. In fact, we'll try that here. So we'll name this application, I'm in the ICE app here, we'll name this application Facebook, and of course the web address to go to when we open it is facebook.com. We can choose which category that this quote-unquote application shows up in the menu. We'll leave it at internet, as that is appropriate. We can select an icon if we'd like. I don't have a Facebook image here, so I'll just click to use the site's emoticon, which is, favicon, which automatically pulls in the Facebook logo from. So if we click apply, it will tell us warning. Never mind. It's asking for an. Oh, it's gonna make me start over. That's nice. It's asking for the HTTP at the beginning of the web address, so be sure to include that. We'll once again use the site's favicon here. Now we should be good. Duplication error. Okay, so that's just me being stupid. But we've clicked apply, and so now if we go into our menu here, go under internet, so you can see we have a Facebook application. Now of course when we do this, it will simply take us to the website, but it does it in this neat little window wrapper that makes it look like a native application on the system. You know, it's not like it's popping up in a web browser or anything. It's just it looks like any other regular application window that contains the website within it. And so this is a really cool feature, especially if there's websites that you use often. Of course, then those applications, for lack of a better word, those web apps, can be put on your desktop or pinned to your taskbar just as any other application on the system would. Now, ICE has been included in order for you as the user to create your own, but the Peppermint OS team has included a few uh, out of the box. For example, under graphics here, the uh, Pixlr Editor and Express Editor are both web applications. And if we open these, we'll do the editor first. As you can see, it opens what looks like a very native and standard photo editor. This is in fact from a website. You do need an internet connection to run this, as you do with most web apps, considering that they're actual websites. But it looks like a native application on the system. You don't have the toolbars and menus of your web browser getting in the way. It just runs like any other native application would on the system. In this case, it's a photo editor. Another example here, I believe, is... I don't know where it's located. Here we go. As a lot of Linux distributions include an Office suite by default, such as LibreOffice or WPS Office. A way of keeping system resources and usage to a minimum while still giving a lot of functionality to the user is that the Peppermint team has instead included a web application for Google Drive, among other things such as Google Calendar and Gmail. So if you open Google Drive, being the suite out of the box, it of course opens in the ICE web wrapper. And so it looks like a native application, and it wants me to sign into my account, my personal account. And I don't think I have anything in here that should be an issue. But as you can see, it opens Google Drive. Of course, this is the website, but it looks and runs a lot like a native application on your system. And this is to be used as the default Office suite. And you could argue whether or not this is a good or a bad thing. And of course, you can then download a different Office suite from the software manager, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But for someone who just is putting this on a system that doesn't necessarily have a ton of power to it, or they don't necessarily need a full-fledged offline Office suite, this is definitely a great way to do things, especially if there's someone that uses Google Drive normally. It's a very good way to access it. A quick note as far as something that's new with Peppermint OS 8, while we're on the topic of applications, is the calculator. This is a small thing, but something that is worth noting. Now this uses the Mate calculator as opposed to the GNOME one. Due to some aesthetic changes, the calculator in Mate, the Mate Calc, just looks much more consistent with XFCE than the new GNOME Calc does. We've been talking a lot about applications here, and it might be good to look at ways to get more software, whether it's just you have a certain set of applications you always use, or you prefer some offline alternatives to the online web applications that are included. And I would like to note that not all of the applications here are web apps. There are plenty that aren't. Most of these games are, but I find they play very well. Simple Scan is a native application, as well as the document viewer. Of course, Chromium, which is the web browser used here, is an offline app, as well as the BitTorrent client here. I'm not sure what it uses for a BitTorrent client. Yes, it uses transmission, which is certainly a common BitTorrent client that works quite well. among other things, including a text editor, VLC. These are all native applications that are on the system. They're not web apps. But as for getting more applications, we first have the software manager, which is actually the software manager from Linux Mint. And I personally think that's a great choice. Uh, the Mint software manager has certainly gotten better looking over the years. It's not the most pretty out there, but it does serve its purpose very well. And I certainly do think it's a very useful software center. Here we go, for example, LibreOffice Writer if you want to download that. You can view reviews for it. Oftentimes some screenshots. Here we go. Details about the package. The Mint Software Manager is certainly a very reliable graphical package manager. If you want to go a little more old school per se, or just get a little more down and dirty with the system, you can of course use the Synaptic Package Manager, which is also included by default. And this is something that I do use a lot. I believe this is also used to manage updates to the system, which we currently do not have any of. You know what? I stand corrected. Actually, it does not use Synaptic for updates. It looks like it may use the Mint software updater as well, which I suppose makes sense considering that it uses their software manager. There have been some other minor changes and additions to Peppermint related to its overall look and feel, as well as some settings. First off, you may have noticed in the menu here, which is the whisker menu, by default, the categories are listed along the left side of the menu, with their results being on the right side. This is typically reverse of what you normally see in the whisker menu, as oftentimes the categories are on the right, with the applications being listed on the left. Something that is really become a key thing for Peppermint OS is the Peppermint Control Center. Excuse me, not the Peppermint Control Center, the Peppermint Settings panel. And this is something that really gives a good combined view of the numerous settings available on the system. In the first ones here, we have a lot of user-based settings, such as look and feel settings, so let you adjust the window title bar themes, as well as the desktop theme itself. I believe this was set to Numix by default. Here we go. Customize look and feel is where you change the actual window themes themselves. By default, this is set to, I believe, Peppermint Dark 7. Of course, you can adjust colors, icon themes, the mouse cursor, fonts, as well as some various other look and feel options. We have panel preferences in here. This hasn't changed too much. There may be slight differences here from previous versions, but I believe most of this is native to the XFCE environment as opposed to anything the Peppermint OS team has done. The customized Numix folder icons is a new feature, and I've found that it doesn't seem to work perfectly on the system. But if you enable a Numix icon theme, then this allows you to customize its appearance and color. This first box here lets you pick between a few different visual styles for the icons, and the right box lets you choose between some preset colors. Now, I found that the presets tend to work fine. When you apply it, it takes a couple moments for it to apply around the system, but once it does, it works alright. But when you set a custom color scheme and you adjust these colors yourself, we'll do something relatively outrageous here, you'll notice that it doesn't show the effects in the preview here, and even after you apply, it doesn't change system-wide either. So the custom coloring does not seem to work properly for the Numix custom folder icon colors. nonetheless, if you do use the Numix icons, it is certainly a nice tool to have to change the coloring of those. Of course, I have wallpapers, language support, Dropbox settings, and keyboard settings. Now, actually, wallpapers here, there are some new wallpapers, and I believe most of these are from the same photographer. There's more information about him on the Peppermint OS website. And there are some fantastic wallpapers in here that look very nice. And it's overall a great collection of wallpapers included. I'll leave it on this for the time being. Under the tweaks section, this is new in Peppermint OS 8, and this has an option first off here, which is to reset the panel to its default settings, which is certainly nice if you modify the panel, you change a bunch of settings about it, and they're applied instantly, and you realize that you in fact did not want any of what you just did, or it broke something. You can easily reset the panel settings. We have a toggle here to turn on and off system sounds. We can adjust notification settings, access to the dconf editor, which is built in, which is a great tool to modify some more core aspects of the system. We have auto mount settings, so you can choose how devices show up on your system, what happens when you plug in a device. Some great settings here that I don't believe were included previously in Peppermint OS. Settings for software and updates. You can enable system hibernation, which, as long as your swap partition on the system is at least as large as the amount of RAM or memory on your system, this should work. And it shows you here in the little utility that, before enabling all this stuff, run this command in the terminal, which will attempt to put the computer in hibernation, and so you can test it to see if it will work. If it does, then you can enable the hibernation settings. And of course we also have some flash player properties. Under hardware, of course, is settings for all your devices, printers, sound, monitor, additional drivers, audio equalizer, and power manager. A, B, and R, I am not familiar with this. This appears to be for multiple monitors, managing multiple monitors on the system. Network has various network settings, of course, a network manager, a firewall, proxy configuration, Bluetooth, and theme locks for both Firefox and Thunderbird. There's an issue with Firefox and Thunderbird sometimes working with dark themes, and so if you're having issues with that, you can enable these theme locks, which make I believe text in certain search boxes display properly. And some final system settings. Some of these are sort of duplicates of other settings we saw in user and tweaks, but we have user and group settings, time and date, startup and default applications, the software and update managers, the disks utility, and settings for the Synaptic package manager. So overall, Peppermint OS certainly remains, has the same goals and achieves them as it always has, being a lightweight distribution that offers a lot of features, but really does a good job keeping used system memory and resources to a minimum. We've looked through quite a bit in this video, and of course my screen recorder is still running, and we'll take a second look at the memory usage. As you can see, currently it's using 429 megabytes of RAM, and that's after having gone through the settings, opened up some web applications, including the web browser, and screen recording the entire time. So that's really not bad. You very feasibly could run this easily on a system with less than a gigabyte of RAM, and it should still be able to perform your daily tasks relatively well. There have been, as we've talked about, some great new things in Peppermint OS 8 that just help to solidify and smooth the experience a little bit more. The Peppermint Control Center, Settings Manager, is definitely one of the best settings center implementations I've seen in XFCE. It does a great job of bringing all your settings together in easy to understand categories, and the default visual tweaks and customizations they have with the theming and the whisker menu and such is certainly a good looking appearance for XFCE. Of course, I love the whisker menu, being that you can easily resize it exactly how you'd like, and that there are a lot of customizations for it. So, give Peppermint OS a try if you have an old or low-end computer that doesn't run very well on other operating systems, or even if you have a modern computer but really want to save your system for the applications you're running. I suppose also if you're a fan of web applications, keeping in mind that you can install just about any other applications you want to via the Mint software manager. So I've been very pleased with Peppermint OS version 8, and that concludes this review. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If there's anything you'd like to say, post in the comments. I'll do my best to reply to you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and make sure to click that new little bell button down by subscribe if you want to receive notifications about future videos. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all next time.